Okay, so one question that relates to what we've been talking about now is what helps us most in learning a new language? And this can be at the level of elementary school, it could be at a college level. And so what types of resources and support do we really want to see more of in the American language education system?
More money for teachers.
I would say to start, never be complacent at any level. You're always pushing to figure out what something else means. If you don't know something, look it up. Don't just ignore it. As you get more advanced, learn more new vocabulary. But it's a constant process, and like I said before, it never ends. And I think I see this every day. My students have smartphones and they have access to Google Translate, and it's so easy to just click a button and you have the answer, but there's so much more nuance in language that a computer can't capture, and relying less on that and using a little bit more multifaceted resources as opposed to just Googling it, I think is important for our own cognitive development and growth, but also to make sure we're challenging ourselves and getting more accurate and authentic answers.
Okay. So I want to say the most important thing is just immersion and the language pledges we had in all my study abroad experiences, of which I had two, both in St. Petersburg. And we had class every day, and Austin and I sometimes would have Russian lunches and Russian breakfasts because we lived together in Russian house. And even Stan, right? That's what it's called. You stand and only speak Russian for 30 minutes. And I'll tell you, it was hard, and we couldn't talk about anything. But for me, just the best part was that I walked to Russian the first day. Our teacher Rita, I said, "Hi, Molly," and she just responded in Russian, "No English, sit down." But I didn't know what she said. It just sounded like nonsense to me, But to me, that's the only way. That's the only way I learned was. Where English, I literally signed a thing when I started here saying, if you speak English, you have to, you can be kicked out of the program, Harshness is how you learn. The Russian mentality.
I was going to say something very similar, which is, there's nothing like being hungry in a foreign country to get you to speak, because you have to eat, you need to buy food, and so. I was going to say that. Other than that, if you can't learn it as a kid, you got to learn it in college, then it's not great. I think it's really hard for most people, and I think the people on this panel are kind of an exception. Not to discourage people from studying languages in college, that's part of what we do. But, technology can be really good now. I've been using app on my phone the last couple of years to explore new languages. They take advantage of all the bad things about how our smartphones are addictive and use them for good. So apps like Duolingo with frequency, repetition, and you've always got your phone on you. I mean, these are tools that we did not have years ago. So I think that can be also very useful.
Yeah, I think the only way to really get good at a language is to just speak it. And I think in my experience, at least taking Italian and then Portuguese here at Wesleyan, there were a lot of opportunities for kind of casual conversation, which are really helpful, and that's what helped me most when I was abroad. And there was definitely a steep learning curve when I was then living with 3 Italian students who were all from different parts of the country and would speak very quickly and in their own dialect sometimes. But if you don't have those opportunities already, I think seeking out just a friend in a class that you can speak to like outside of the actual class, or finding other ways to kind of like meet native speakers and just force yourself to kind of speak colloquially, that's one of the best and most helpful things, I think, when you're learning another language.
Piggybacking off of that, and this has come up in answering some of the other questions as well. I mean, the United States, it's a country of immigrants, right? Whether you were an immigrant recently or an immigrant many, many years ago, or not acknowledge the folks who've been here from the very beginning, or folks who are forced to come over here against their will. but there are many immigrants that make up this country, and I wonder if there's a way that we can tap into the diversity of the communities that we live in a bit more, as early on as middle school, high school. So I think even in the communities that we live in, regardless of what the makeup of those communities are, there always will be people that we can tap into who are native speakers of different languages, and facilitating, I think, more active conversation and breaking down some of those barriers, I think, could potentially be a good way to have more conversation, because I do agree in what some of the previous panelists have said, that the speaking and the listening is such an essential part of learning a language, and it's harder to get when you're sitting down and just reading books and trying to learn the grammatical structures of things.
For me, I just wanted to make learning a language fun. So in Russia, the internet is amazing. You can download anything you want. And I watched all the Harry Potters in Russian. They were dubbed over, but I know the word for wand now, and like all these other fun words I'll never know. But so that, and then there were these books that I found in bookstores that had the Russian page on the left and the English translation on the right, so I would read both, and that was just a way to, so it wasn't frustrating just reading a Russian textbook and not knowing, because I could look over at the English side. And then using apps and stuff like that, learning, I listened to a lot of Russian indie rock and learned a lot of cool slang. I read a Russian prison vocabulary book once, which was really interesting. So just making it fun and interesting is like a good resource, I think.
Definitely agree with that, and I think that's something I ended up watching a lot of the Harry Potter movies in Italian with my roommates, and the first books I read fully in Italian was Matilda, because it was a book that I read a ton of times as a kid, and so I thought, me and one of my friends decided to buy kids' books that we knew really well in Italian, and that was a really fun thing, because I knew the story, and so I didn't have to worry about getting the story and all of that, and I could focus on the new vocabulary and the new grammatical things I was learning, which is a really fun thing to learn.
And these are also things that you can share with your friends who maybe even aren't studying that language, because the more that you can just spread, you can also act as kind of a representative of the language that you're learning, and be kind of be out there kind of bringing that out to the rest of the world, who maybe even if they're not studying that language can still find joy in kind of the products of that language. Like I love The Terrace House on Netflix. Yeah, I can't tell you how many other people I know who don't speak a lick of Japanese but who love The Terrace House. So like you can also find these, like you can make it fun, not just like for yourself and your language learning, but you can kind of create these pockets of communities and just like find other ways to just enjoy what you're doing, and also like be ahead of the game with everyone else who doesn't know the language that you as they're watching it.